Are you listening? Damn. Yeah.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Damn Podcast. I'm your host, Angie Machado. Joined with me, as always, is BeaverBlitz staff writer extraordinaire in Corvallis, Jake Hedberg. Jake, how are you? It's been a few minutes here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm doing pretty well. You know, school's winding down, got 2 weeks left, and, you know, summertime's almost here, so can't complain.
Yeah, and graduating, big things going on with Jake Hedberg. So we wanted to get to you guys, though. Actually, Jake texted me today and said, we need to do a damn podcast to talk Corvallis Regional. So it's kind of a busy time right now because not only do we have baseball going on, we have recruiting, and we've been following up with all the recruiting trips. So another big weekend, just to get that off the table, another big recruiting weekend this weekend. Jake, quick, I know this wasn't on our rundown, but how has the month of May been as far as Oregon State recruiting, in your opinion?
Yeah, you know, it's all been it sounds very positive. You know, talking with the recruiting staff and the recruits themselves, it sounds like the visits are going strong. You know, the Beavers have picked up one commitment since they kicked off official visits in Colorado. Running back Braylon Tolliver, who's a guy that the Beavers identified pretty quickly after the decommitment of LaMarcus Bell. There's going to be 6 more prospects on campus this weekend, and then 5 and then another 5. So, you know, hopefully the Beavers can finish strong and, you know, get to the end of June with 7 or 8 commitments in hand.
Yeah, those first couple weeks in May are the very first visit. So these kids have now something to compare their visit to Oregon State with. Like you said, all returns have been good, and it's going to be a busy couple weeks. But what a weekend to have visitors coming this weekend. Not only is the weather looking like it's going to be fantastic, huge action going on over at Goss Stadium with the Corvallis Regional. So we want to dive in here. Jake broke it down earlier, kind of just introducing the teams. Obviously, we'll have more as we get closer to the games. JP's weekly walk-off. If you're not a member, you can join now for $1. And that is a do not miss. He'll dive deep into each of the teams to give you everything you need to know heading into this weekend's matchup. But let's just start. So looking at the teams, Oregon State was granted or awarded the number 8 national seed, which is huge because if they're able to get out of the regional, then they would still be a host. So Oregon State is the 1 seed, 2 seed TCU, 3 seed USC, 4 seed St. Mary's. Let's start with Oregon State. Tell me why they deserve to be that 8 seed.
Yeah, you know, I think it's definitely been a pretty big debate nationally of whether or not Oregon State should have gotten that top 8 seed, you know, not playing a conference schedule. But I honestly think Oregon State's schedule this year was just as tough as it would have been had they remained and played a Pac-12 schedule. The Pac-12 as a whole, really, outside of Oregon and UCLA and Arizona, those were kind of the 3 other teams that I would consider that could really compete with Oregon State. In Oregon State, they've scheduled some pretty good teams, you know, and challenging places to play. You know, I think getting UC Irvine was a very tough series. I think Oregon was a tough series. So I think this is a team that's, you know, faced some tests, and they've dealt with a lot of adversity. You know, they've lost contributors like Jay Petrosky and Matthew Burrell for the entire season. You know, they played a ton of road games. They spent a lot of time on the road. And I think, you know, just that overall body of work with how much they've traveled, it warranted an 8 seed. I could have seen them very well not being a top 8 seed, but I think their resume was more than strong enough, and I think this team is going to come out and try and show why they deserve that top 8 seed.
So, question: I'm looking because there was actually a Oregon State baseball put out here it is, the total flight miles, because they were road warriors this year. Their total miles traveled this year was 23,465 miles. That is just crazy. You know, they had trips to Phoenix and Texas and Vegas, Hawaii, Des Moines, Nebraska. That is a brutal schedule. for them to do that. So how do you let were you actually surprised when they announced them as the 8 seed? Did you think they were going to get looked over again?
The more I looked at it Sunday night, the more I felt comfortable that Oregon State would get that top 8 seed. I thought it was going to come down to Oregon State and Coastal Carolina.
Yeah.
I think Coastal Carolina taking the Conference USA, I thought that kind of might have bumped them over us actually. So I was pleasantly surprised to see us number 8, but as the night kind of progressed, the more I looked at the metrics, the resumes, it seemed like Oregon State was deserving of that top 8 seed. And I feel like Coastal 13 or whatever they are, 11 or 13, I feel like that's a team that deserved to be higher than that.
Which one? Sorry, you broke up. Coastal?
Coastal Carolina.
Yeah. Okay, so Oregon State finished the regular season 41-12-1. This is their 24th appearance, 8th consecutive, and 11th regional that they've hosted. That puts them right up there with the best of the best. Just a recap last year for those of you guys that they all kind of run together sometimes, but last year they lost in Lexington at the Super Regional. Who are you thinking this is their time to really step up and shine?
Yeah, I think there's two guys that kind of come to mind: Trent Caraway and Dallas Macias. These are both guys that have had their struggles this season, but Oregon State fans know what they are capable of. Trent, he kind of came out of that slump towards the end of the Long Beach State series. If he can get going to how he was at the start of the season, it just makes that Oregon State lineup that much dangerous. And then Dallas Macias was a guy who I thought was at times Oregon State's second best player last season, and then he's really struggled this season. He can't catch any breaks. He's not striking out a whole lot. The balls are just not going his way. He did hit 2 home runs on Saturday, so I'm hopeful that kind of carries over and that kind of gives him that confidence, because if Dallas Macias gets to that level in the postseason, how he played in 2024, then just like Trent Caraway going back to form, it really transforms this Oregon State offense.
Yeah. So you mentioned Saturday. So Oregon State did not have a conference tournament like so many of the other teams. They instead opted to stay sharp. They had a 3-day scrimmage that they opened up to fans. Did you make any of those?
I did not. Had a pretty busy weekend.
Yeah, they were. They had home run derbies going on. It was a good way for them to kind of stay engaged and ready for the action. So Oregon State, we're going to go through all the teams and we'll kind of talk about the matchups a little bit. They take on St. Mary's first, though. Do you think they go with Segura for that first game?
Yeah.
Yes.
In my mind,
their normal rotation.
I'd be surprised if they wouldn't. Yeah, I think what they're going to try and do is hopefully get a lead high enough to where they can save some of their stronger bullpen arms like Queen, Hutchinson, Keljo, and then hopefully if they get 6 strong and feel comfortable enough, they can put in some younger guys like Kmatz or Zach Edwards, get those guys some early post experience and just kind of get their feet wet playing in that environment. And then you can get Hutch, Queen, Keljo, Kellen Oaks, kind of save those more experienced and maybe more trusted guys, save them for the Saturday and Sunday matchups.
Okay, so the number 2 seed of the Corvallis Regional is TCU. I know a lot of their fans were disappointed that they were not a top 16. They felt that they were deserving of that. They finished the season 39-18. Their coach, Kirk Sarlos, is in his 4th season. This is their 20th appearance in the postseason and their first since 2023. In 2023, they lost in Omaha. What have you seen? What stands out to you about this TCU team?
Yeah, this is a team that I think very well could have been one of those top 16 teams. I think it's a team that's going to be very angry and motivated coming into Corvallis. In fact, I honestly think they're the scariest team out of not only the Corvallis Regional, but the Tallahassee as well. I feel like the best 2 teams are Oregon State and TCU. I think FSU's got a really good Friday guy, but I don't know how good they are compared to TCU. And sorry, I don't want to get sidetracked, but this is a team that has a really good pitching staff. Tommy Lepore's a fantastic pitcher. They're, I want to say, top 20 in the country in team ERA, and it's a team that's played a decently strong schedule. So, it's going to be tough for them to play in Goss, but I think this is by far the biggest threat in the Corvallis Regional.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. I think this will be a tough matchup. The third seed of the region is USC. USC has had their struggles playing at Goss. Their record is 35-21. They were one of the last 4 in, I believe. Is that right?
I think they were the last team in.
Okay. They were the last team in.
Yep. They were the last team in.
Their postseason history, they have some history. 38th appearance in the postseason, but this is their first postseason appearance since 2015. In 2015, they lost in the Lake Elsinore Regional. I know they have a smoking hot pitcher. Tell me a little bit about SC.
Yeah, I mean, SC is one of the most historical, biggest baseball programs around. I was kind of surprised to find out this is their second appearance in the NCAA tournament since they came to Corvallis in the 2005 tournament. So it's really been a very long time since they've been consistently playing postseason ball. Familiar face on staff, Andy Jenkins, who coached here under Pat Casey's on staff there. So it'll be a homecoming for him. But I mean, this is a team that has a dynamic pitcher in Caden Aoki. The Beavers has faced him in prior seasons, but he's a guy that is arguably the best pitcher in this whole regional. Not overly impressed with SC. I think their pitching is questionable. Offensively, they're solid. They have a really good two-way player in Ethan Hedges, who is home runs, and then he is also their closer. He's got 9 saves, so that's probably the biggest name to watch on that team. Overall, I don't see SC really making too far of a run.
Our friend Mark Garland is on watching right now and says USC has one of the best 1-2 punches no one talks about on the bone. So that's one to watch. Who do you think did they go with Aoki game 1?
I think you have to go Caden Aoki. He's a guy who's proven himself, and I think especially as a 2 or 3 seed, that game is a must win. They're all must win, but you've got to come out and start strong, and I think you've got to throw your best guy against a really tough, really scrappy, really good TCU team.
Okay, I've got a question because I've seen this on a TCU message board. Who's the better pitcher, Tommy Lepore from TCU or Caden Aoki?
I really haven't watched them enough to make a concrete decision. Statistically, Tommy Lepore is better. I do feel like Aoki might have better.
Yeah, sorry. Lepore is 8-2 with a 2.89 ERA, while Aoki is 5-4 with a 4.21 ERA.
Yeah. I think Aoki's stuff might be a little bit better. Overall, they are 2 very good pitchers, and probably I don't want to nax Segura or any of those guys, but I feel like those 2 are probably the best 2 pitchers in this regional.
In the regional, yeah. And Mark Garland just chimed in and said Tommy Lepore is better consistently, but Aoki has better stuff. So 2 names to watch, Beaver Nation, if you are, as you're gearing up for this. Tommy Lepore with TCU, and then Caden Aoki with USC. Moving on to the 4th seed in the Corvallis. Oh, go ahead.
And they should be going against each other.
Yeah, they should, shouldn't they?
And on Friday, those 2 guys should be going up against each other. So the Beavers shouldn't have to face any of those 2, unless SC or TCU, for whatever reason, decides not to throw them. Okay.
Well, we've seen that happen, but you also don't want to risk heading to the losers bracket either. So. So St. Mary's comes in with a 35-24 record. Eric Valenzuela in his 8th year. This is their 2nd appearance in the postseason, their first since 2016, where they lost in the Raleigh Regional. A very familiar name to Beaver fans, leads off for the St. Mary's Gaels. You want to tell us about it?
They've got they have one of the top players in this entire regional. They've got the cousin of Nick Madrigal. They've got Eddie Madrigal, who's got 21 homers and 77 RBIs. He's statistically the best player in this entire region, and he's going to be a guy that Oregon State really has to watch out for on Friday night. This team's pretty good offensively. Pitching staff is questionable, to say the least. They are not the strongest there. Their team ERA this season is 6.2. So Oregon State's bats, they should be able to get going. But this is a team that is hot. They won the West Coast Conference. They swept Santa Clara right before. They took 2-3 from Gonzaga. And baseball, the teams that get hot at the right times, usually the teams that go on the biggest run. So Oregon State, they can't overlook game one and get ready for TCU or SC. They got to get locked in, because this is a St. Mary's team. If their offense can keep producing like they have been, it could spell some trouble for Oregon State.
Yeah, and we've seen, as Oregon State fans know, nothing's off the table when it comes to postseason. I mean, everybody's bringing their best stuff, and you can't take the pedal off the metal, or the foot off the pedal. Okay, so this is shaping up. Oregon State and TCU and SC start the action Friday at noon. That game will be on ESPNU, and tickets already sold out for the Goss for the Corvallis Regional. And then Oregon State St. Mary's is a 5:00 start, and that'll be on ESPN Plus. So let's talk about the matchup with St. Mary's. How does Oregon State's offense, face or match up with their pitching?
Yeah, I mean, this is a St. Mary's pitching staff that's not great. There's still not really sure who they're going to throw. If I had to guess, it'll be Dylan Delhicho, who's been kind of their top guy, at least their top starter. He's got a 4.85, 71 strikeouts and 65 innings, and his batting average against is 220. So that's pretty decent numbers. He's a 6-foot left-handed pitcher, and the Beavers have kind of struggled against those those lefties this year. So if they end up going with Delhicho, it could be a tough task. But overall, I think if Oregon State plays their game, plays your classic Oregon State baseball, I think the Beavers should roll in game one.
Okay, so looking at that TCU SC matchup, I'm guessing you're going to go with TCU there?
Yeah, I think just TCU's better offensively. SC is good, but going up against Tommy Lepore, I think his consistency and what he's been able to do this season, I think that'll translate. I think the wild card is Caden Aoki. If he comes out and can throw 6-7 really good innings, then it gets a little bit more interesting. But the gut feeling is TCU to take that game.
Okay, and then so we would Oregon State. The Corvallis Regional would be the Friday Sunday. Is that right? There's a Thursday, Saturday, Friday, Sunday.
Friday, Saturday, Sunday, with potential of a game on Monday.
Okay, gotcha. Okay. Did you watch any of the conference games this past weekend?
I watched some. I did not watch any of these teams play, however.
Yeah, I know. I watched some SEC stuff.
Yeah, I watched an inning of SC play, but I was mostly watching the SEC and ACC. So
what do you think? What is Oregon State's biggest Achilles heel right now heading into this Corvallis Regional?
Consistency offensively. I think we've seen, the Beavers have 3 reliable guys right now in Arquette, Turley, and Wilson Weber. I'd put AJ Singer in there too. So they've got 4 consistent guys. But outside of that, Talt slumped at times this year. Carey slumped at times. Cannon Reader's starting to come and turn back on. So hopefully what Cannon hit against Long Beach State translate as well. I think if the Beavers can get, a few other guys to step up and get multi-hit games, don't have to be doubles or home runs, but if Craig can get going, Caraway can get going, that just makes this offense so much more dangerous. And the other thing is the depth in the bullpen. The Beavers have Wyatt Queen I feel comfortable with. AJ Hutchinson I feel comfortable with. Keljo obviously feel comfortable with. But outside of that, I'm throwing Palmer in there as well. I feel comfortable in Palmer. But outside of that, Kamatz is a guy I want to see get some experience. Zach Edwards the same way. Then you got guys that have really struggled with consistency this year, like Joey Mutt and Tanner Douglas. I think if the Beavers need to get into their bullpen, it could spell some trouble. So hopefully they're able to, their starters can go 6-7 innings strong, and then Oregon State can get those trusted, reliable guys out there in the pen and just keep the game going in their direction.
And that's the thing we've seen year after year. It's the pitching that can take its toll, and you don't get very far in this whole postseason if you don't have, arms that can go. Okay, what is Oregon State's strength? What do you feel really comfortable with?
I think starting pitching. I think Segura, Dax Whitney has been fantastic at Goss this season, and then Kleinschmidt, I think, has been Oregon State's overall best starting pitcher this season. So between those three guys, I feel very comfortable with. My biggest question, it's not a concern question, it's more of a question, is what does Oregon State
Uh-oh. You there, Jake?
Sunday or Saturday or Friday?
Wait, you totally froze.
For the potential.
You totally froze. So yeah, you cut out. So it was my one question and then it cut out. So can you go ahead and repeat that?
Oh, it cut out. Okay. My one biggest question is, what is the role of Nelson Keljo this weekend? Is he a guy who the Beavers throw as the kind of a 3-4 inning guy out of the pen? Do they bring him in as 1 inning out of the pen as a closer? Or do they save him for the possibility of a start on Monday? It's a possibility Oregon State has to play in a win or go home game on Monday night. Do the Beavers save Nelson Keljo? Do they save Kellen Oaks? Do they save Queen? What do they do with Keljo? I think he's kind of the X factor on the staff now that he's rotated from the starting role into the long reliever closer job. So what Keljo does is going to be very intriguing to follow this weekend.
Yeah, I agree. And like we just talked about too, that is kind of the whole pitching chess game that has to go on for the coaches. That is something that I think it separates the really, the good teams and the ones that can go far into the postseason and those that struggle. So how big is it that Oregon State has Goss behind them?
I think it's huge. I mean, the Beavers have one of the biggest, best postseason advantages in the country. I think the crowds are going to get rowdy. I think a lot of the TCU fans are kind of undervaluing how loud Goss can really get. I've kind of seen some back and forth on social media about that. Did I cut out again?
Nope, you're good.
Yeah, I'm good. Perfect. Okay. Sorry, I'm having some Wi-Fi connection today. Yeah. But I mean, Goss has proven its worth. The Beavers have won their last 2 regionals they've hosted at Goss, and they've won 4 out of 5 at Goss, I believe. So it's the postseason results in the past at Goss have been pleasant, and I think with a strong weekend, the weather is going to be nice. I think the Beavers can keep that going.
So Mark Garland chimed in again. We should have got Mark on, but this was a last-minute pod that we kind of jumped in because we wanted to talk about this. They should say Wyatt for Monday. A lead on Friday would change things in a good way for the Beavs. Yeah, I think Jake mentioned that too early when we first started.
My guess is one of I think it'll be Queen, Keljo, or Oaks on Monday if they do have to throw that game.
Yeah, Rip City says Goss got him. We've seen that happen in the past too. So I think it's going to be an exciting few days in Corvallis. I think the weather is going to play a big part. Yeah. And like we said early when we first started, a ton of football recruits on campus as well. Atmosphere should be over the top. Any last closing thoughts?
Do we want to talk about the six kids on campus?
We can. We absolutely can. Okay, so all you baseball fans, you can totally stay with us, or we're gonna switch gears a little bit here and talk football recruiting. Jake is going to give us a quick rundown on who will be in town, so you'll hear it here first. Okay, Jake, who do we got? Let's start with first one. Yeah, so the highest rated kid on campus this weekend is a 3-star outside linebacker out of Washington. Ramzik, I believe his last name is pronounced Fruin, something like that, from Spanway. He's a kid who's a team FSP guy. The Beavers still have a ton of connections there with guys like Jabari Johnson, Malachi Durant, Tiandre Waverly. So it's a guy coming from a place that's very
connected to Oregon State. I see him as probably the longest shot, however, out of these 6. He's a pretty talented kid. He's got officials slated for Washington, UCLA, or BYU and BYU as well. Yeah. So this one might be a little bit tougher. Super talented kid. Most schools are kind of seeing him as an inside backer, but the Beavers are trying to flex him outside and play outside linebacker.
Yeah, his size. He's 6'4", 215. For those of you guys that aren't right on, I pulled it all up. So he has that length.
He's got some good size on him. Got some really good length.
So then Cameron Purnell out of San Diego Lincoln.
Yeah, it's a 3-star safety. He's got offers from Cal, Utah, Washington as well. Same high school, I believe, as Oregon State corner Jaleel Tucker. So that's something to watch potentially, that connection there. It's kind of a tweener corner safety. Oregon State's pursuing him more as a safety, 6'1", 180. And, I think this might be another tough one with those, those bigger schools in Cal and Utah in Washington. But if Oregon State can go out there and show him a good weekend and make a strong impression on him, he very well could be an Oregon State Beaver.
Another defensive back coming from Pittsburgh, California, in Truly Bell.
Yeah, I mean, this is a guy that's got another Oregon State connection. Same school as Zachary Card, and with talking to Truly, he said he's very tight with Card. They still text every day, or they text a lot. Truly's a guy who's, again, a tweener. The Beavers are recruiting him at safety at 6'1", 175. He's got some impressive scholarships. He's got Georgia, Arizona. Not necessarily sure if those are committable, but he's also got officials lined up to San Diego State and Fresno State. So this is one I could see Oregon State taking for sure. And
grades aren't an issue. They don't appear to be an issue, as he has a Dartmouth Ivy League offer as well.
Yeah, smart kid.
You like the guys that are going to qualify.
Very well spoken.
Okay, so we got Friendswood, Texas. Now, Oregon State has not been shy of recruiting Texas this cycle. Jordan Kreitz, a defensive lineman, 6'6", 250. Tell me about Jordan.
Yeah, this is a guy that's got some size on him. He's gonna be able to fill out, ideally get up to 280, 290. Physically, kind of reminds me of like a Joe Golden type almost, just that big, long, strong type of frame. Oregon State's really trying to take 2 defensive tackles this upcoming season, or this upcoming class. They've already got a shorter, stronger guy in Noah Tischendorf. I think they're trying to add another complimentary guy who's a little bit bigger, and Jordan Kreitz is someone who certainly fits that criteria. He's got some impressive offers. He's got officials with Baylor, TCU, and Tulane, but those are all close to home. If he's a guy who wants to get away from home, Oregon State's a good spot, and Oregon State's produced some pretty good defensive tackles under a Trent Brady defense, so that could be very appealing to him.
Yeah, then I'm another Oregon State looking. They're not afraid to like I said, venture out. So Braylon Ellison, Boonville, Missouri, interior offensive lineman, listed at 6'4", 285. And that's one thing Coach Kavanaugh is going to need to pull some guys this cycle.
Yeah, I still haven't got the chance to watch the film yet, so I can't really break down a whole lot. But, what we've seen. Oh, did I cut out again?
No, there, you're back. You're good.
I'm back? Okay, there we go.
Yep.
We've kind of seen Coach Nav kind of offer more developmental guys, guys who don't necessarily have the best offer sheets, but guys who have a ton of potential. And I think this is what he sees in Braylon Ellison. He's got good size already for an offensive guard at 6'4", 280. He's a guy who's coming from really a pretty far town. I believe he's from the same school as DJ Westlock was, so there's another Oregon State connection there. Just a big kid. Excited to get him on campus.
Yeah, so it looks like shows offers from Arkansas State, Ball State, Coastal Carolina, with some others there. And then last, Arlington, Texas, Bowie, one of a really strong program in the state of Texas that we all know has a lot of talent. Bryson Castile, linebacker. So he's a 6'1", 200-pound linebacker. Looking at him interior.
Yep. This might be my favorite player on campus this weekend just based off his film. The kid's electric. He's a good pass rusher. He kind of plays more of a safety, outside backer, nickel hybrid kind of spot now, but Trent Bray likes him as an inside linebacker, and I really like him too. Talking with the coaching staff, they said he reminds them of Bright Ogwebu a bit in terms of his flexibility at similar kind of style of play. He's a great kid. I've enjoyed talking to him throughout this process. He's got some pretty strong offers: Houston, Pitt, Arizona. He's taken officials to all three of those schools. But this is one I think Oregon State could very well come out with. He has a good, very strong relationship with Trent Bray. So I think if Oregon State makes a good impression on Castile, he could pull the trigger. And I'm really hoping he does, because I think he's a very talented player.
Watching his film, he is twitchy and quick. I love watching. You're right. He is probably my favorite watching his film. And he's not even ranked right now in 24/7. So that just tells you how much talent is in Texas. But I think that it's just very untapped. Like you said, you add 20 pounds, 25 pounds to him. Very, very exciting.
That's player. What I think the question. Yeah, that's what I think the question is can he put on that weight?
So I mean, that'll be interesting when they get to campus.
Yeah, it's like, does he have the ability to put on that weight and go play inside backer, or because the problem with Brett Ogwebu is he couldn't put on the weight to play outside backer, and then moved him to safety, and he was too big, and he was kind of in a tweener role. So hopefully Castile can put on that weight, because he's a guy who I could see really fitting in well with what Trent Bray looks for in an inside linebacker. And I think he's a guy who, if he can put on that weight, could be very special in an Oregon State front seven.
Yeah. Like you said, he is kind of that tweener right now. But because, he's a little short to be playing outside backer, but electric. So if you haven't watched this film, Bryson Castile, check out the film, because it is impressive. So those 6 are coming to campus. There'll be a couple more weekends. Right now there's 5 each of the other weekends, but those things are fluid and kind of change each week. So that's why we kind of go week to week on visits. But it should be a pretty exciting weekend. Do you feel that anybody that has visited in the month of May could be close to popping, or do you think they're all taking their other visits and checking things out?
Yeah, I think they're all going to take their visits. I think, especially in today's day and age, kids are trying to see more schools, see how much they have to offer, not only athletically but financially as well. So I think you're going to see a lot more of these kids kind of take their time and wait till the end of June, start of July. But if I had to guess on who might be next, I think just based on their overall reactions, I think Lance McGee from Washington, inside backer, he really enjoyed his time in Corvallis. I think Oregon State really made a strong impression on him. He's a kid from Yakima, so not local, but close to home. So he's got officials with Wazoo, Boise, SDSU, and Colorado State. So it's an all Pac-12 showdown. But he's a kid who I think he's got the size that's ready to play now. He's a kid who could come in and contribute immediately. The question is I don't know how fast he runs. How well does he carry that size that's ready to play now? But I think he's a guy who could be very close to popping.
So, I'm just looking ahead. If you guys are stargazers, that weekend of June 20th is the one you want to be paying dialed in. There's some big-time commit or a big-time commit and a couple other big-time prospects coming in that weekend as of now. So definitely you'll want to be on BeaverBlitz over the next month. Not only, like I said earlier, with JP's weekly walk-off, he dives in, breaks down all of these, the 4 teams in the Corvallis Regional for baseball better than anyone you'll see. You'll have every table, you'll know every stat, and that will run on Friday morning. I should have it Friday morning, if not Thursday afternoon, for him to get that to me. It's been around for 20 years. I think he's starting this is his 20th season. And then also with the football recruiting, Jake is doing a killer job keeping up with the recruits and who's visiting and previewing, and then also getting their thoughts after their visit. So definitely jump in. We are running a $1 for the first month special. So it's a no-brainer, guys. Jump in. You'll also get the lodge at BeaverBlitz, which is a ton of discussion, game day threads, all of the above. So Jake, anything else you want to touch on?
No, I think it should be a great weekend in Corvallis. If you can, try and get out to Goss. I know tickets are very hard to come by, but This is a team that has the capability of making a run, and we're going to need every seat full to make that happen.
There you go. Thanks for joining. This was an emergency pod, so we had a lot of people join. So thank you all for joining, and we'll be back. Hopefully, Jake, we're back next week.
Ideally, fingers crossed.
Ideally, yes. We're back next week for another episode of the Damn Podcast.